We're live on Facebook.
Yes, it seems like we are live, Beck.
Yeah, we're live now.
Yes, good morning, everyone, wherever you are, if it's evening, afternoon. Once again, we are bringing live to you emotional well-being series, a podcast series. We are all one. And it's a theme that we created a few weeks ago. And the topics that we bring to all of you listeners is all about our well-being. It's all about these topics that really affects our well-being and also impacts our well-being, but also allows you to sustain and we call it what do we call it when we say stabilize our emotional well-being. So without further, this is topics that we have been bringing all along. Today is going to be a very interesting topic, and we have a very special guest coming from Argentina, right? And
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken, but has lived in New Zealand, so she has lived all around, it seems like. But let's hear from her real story that we would be uncovering today. But We Are All One is a podcast series of emotional well-being that we bring every week and try to impact us and impact everyone that can resonate their stories, and they can be also then come on this platform to share their stories. But without today delaying, I would like to once again go back to Beck, who is our wonderful host and beautiful that she has conducted this series all throughout. And I would really especially like to thank her for today's topic, because today's topic is not about the speaker who is here, but also to everyone, but also it kind of resonates with our host, Beck. So I think it will be interesting, and it will be really, really uncovering those truths and facts. So over to you, Beck, to bring to us this topic today, which is grief and growth.
Thank you, Shailesh. Yes, as Shailesh said, grief and growth is a topic that I've personally been I've experienced personally. I was going to say affected, but no, I've personally experienced grief. So I'm very honored and excited to have Julia with us today as we have just an open chat into this topic and share our experiences for all of our listeners today. So before we go any further, I would just like to welcome Julia. And I'll just let you all know a little bit about Julia before we go any further. She is a certified transformational master coach, and she specializes in grief, growth, and baby loss. So in 2016, she lost her son, who was born on the 26th, in the 26th pregnancy week, and later died in her arms 5 days later. After this, she started her healing and growth journey, which led her to study health and life coaching, as well as other healing tools. She now uses her experience to an extensive toolbox to support other women and heal from their heart and deal with their overwhelming emotions. So I'd just like to thank you, Julia, for being here with us today and welcome you into our space.
Yeah, thank you. Super honored and happy to be here and open up the conversation about grief and growth, and just bring some awareness in the topics that we usually like to ignore and not talk about.
Wonderful. Awesome. So before, I guess, let's just get into it. Would you like to share a little bit about your story with us to start with, Julia?
Yeah. I love to, and I always wonder where to start, but I think my starting point is the moment when I decided to become a mother. Decided that I wanted to become pregnant, and my partner and I had already been in a long-term relationship, 11 years. And I think there is never the perfect time to have a baby. I think it's you always can hold yourself back and tell, oh, it's not yet. And I think it's always going to be challenging. Anyways, I happened to become pregnant relatively fast, so there were no struggles, and I had a healthy pregnancy, and everything seemed awesome. Great test results, good scans, everything fine. And like you said, in my 26th pregnancy week, I went into labor out of nowhere. There was no previous signs of anything like that happening. And I did not expect it, even in that moment when I went into labor. I have, no experience how labor pain feels. I did not know what I'm experiencing. And not long after my first cramp, maybe an hour or two later, I ended up in the hospital. And after, like, it's been a traumatic experience, that moment, because there is this sense of power loss, of control of your life, which I think we often experience when we experience loss, because it's definitely something out of our control.
Oh, definitely.
And I went into surgery. I got a C-section because the labor was progressed so far that there was no chance of keeping my son, who we already had named before, Simon, inside of me, keep him safe, keep him there, nurture him the way I wanted to nurture him. Of course, we all have ideas, expectations about our pregnancy, how our birth's going to look like, how the first weeks look like. Mine, of course, looked completely different than that. I thought about hypnobirthing and having like nurses who support me with essential oils, and I was not even there. Like, I got oh no, I'm missing the English word. I'm originally from Germany, in case you haven't noticed my accent.
Yeah.
Well, I was
Induced?
and the German word is induced. No, the German word is narcos. So I was sleeping during.
Oh, yeah.
During
so you're
birth.
put under?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I woke up just a few hours later without my son, without being pregnant. Didn't know what happened, and went to see him as soon as I could, as soon as it was physically possible. He survived the birth, which was a miracle in itself.
Yeah. So we're just alone, before we get any further, like this, you've had such a traumatic experience to get here where you are. And as you said, it's such a miracle that your son survived the birth. And I guess, I think a lot of us women, and people, we don't actually realize how dangerous and traumatic birth can be. So, like, to have a healthy and safe birth for the mother and the child is a miracle in itself. So, I think, yeah.
I mean, acknowledging that, we can also acknowledge that we all are miracles, just the mere fact
definitely.
that we exist on this earth. And saying that, I am extremely grateful for the time I have been pregnant, for the time I have been given to spend with my son, even if it was definitely one of the hardest times in my life, to have him. It was amazing being with him for 5 days, but also heartbreaking seeing him in an incubator. Seeing him being bruised all over his body because of the contraction, and such a small being, that's been a lot of physical stress on his body, of course. Well, for us as parents, that meant a lot of hope, hoping in that moment that everything will be working out just fine. It also meant a lot of decisions about what's going to happen with him, a lot of getting informed, realizing what's actually going on. And while doing all of that, trying to be there as parents, strong, hopeful, trying to send him those good vibes, send him healing vibes. While feeling like actually, crying all the time because we're robbed of what you had expected.
I think you said the key that I've taken, when you first started sharing with us is that, with everything that happens and with grief, it's loss of control, so it's like, as new mums, as, partners, we're in these situations, we don't have the control to, to be able to deal with the situation as we know how we would usually, the questions and the information that we've been handed at the time, the options that we would want are not even, they're not even available. So it's really, I think the loss of control comes with these traumas and grief, because, you've got to be in a certain mindset and you just really can't. There's no physical or mental way that you're able to be in a mindset of control or of, I think mindset, because you just have no understanding or no experience of how to actually handle these situations until you're in the moment.
Yes. And I think that there is, like, grieving is something you also can learn and in one way, for the lack of better words, improve. I think it's more about accepting and learning how to handle the emotions and accept that they are okay. Like, this is what is going on right now. I'm feeling like hell. Like, I am angry that happened, and I'm angry at the universe. I'm angry at the whole world. I'm angry at my body, and allowing those emotions is, I think, something that helps us in grief.
Definitely.
To not, I always say, do not shoot the second arrow, because we're already hurt. You don't need to, pull and say, but you should deal with this differently. Whatever way.
No, I would definitely agree with that. Being through my own journey of grief, you go through, and they do say, there's you go through every emotion, they have, and in each journey, like, in my journey and your journey, like, the emotions may come in different sequences. But I think, everybody who does experience some form of grief and loss, in whatever, circumstances or scenario, I think we all have to go through the different emotions, anger, joy, at some point we come to joy that we've, come back to ourselves and are able to acknowledge the path that we've been on for however many days, months, years. And, but I think definitely, I like that, what you just said, and can resonate with that, don't shoot that second arrow. That's definitely something that I probably could have heard at the time, don't shoot that second arrow, because I definitely shot it many times. Yeah,
me too. And I'm glad when I learned that it helped me so much, being aware of that. And you can shoot the second arrow when you experience joy. Like, you're like, oh, what a beautiful sunny moment. Isn't that a nice day? And then you're like, oh, but I shouldn't feel this way, because actually, life is not like how I would have imagined that day. So you're like pulling it out again. I was like, no.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, so sorry. I see. I'm very much still in my grief journey. So I apologize if I do get triggered today, guys. But this is where I'm at in my full rawness here.
But this is all about emotional well-being series that we want people to talk about it rather than grieve inside. So if your grief is inside, you got to let it out, basically. And I feel that this is a good communication platform where we could talk to each other and talk to the world that what we are grieving. You could also go there, but pain is a pain, as we always say, that we want the pain, we want the joy, we want everything. So that's why when I look at it, people watch emotional movies, people watch sad movies, people like to have tragic movies. All these are all pain and grief, but they find joy in it, because ultimate hope, as Julia mentioned, the hope that we always have when the baby is coming out or when anything is happening, we feel there is a hope. And with that hope, we uncover ourselves that yes, we can't control it, but we have to just experience it. And this is what we learn from our experiences when we have, whether it is grieving too much or whether we are into that mode of grief, we still have to come out of it. And we still have to, when we come out of it, that's our emotions keeps telling us, as Julia mentioned, like all our emotions tell us, whether it's a body emotion, mind emotion, or any emotion that we feel, all emotions point us to the direction and they try to put you down towards the pain that we are suffering. But this is where our challenge becomes, because we are over and above another way of living beings. We are human beings and we can have the power to control or to move out of or change the direction of our pain. And I think changing the direction of the pain is important.
To a certain extent, there's little snippets there that I would agree with you, Shailesh. But then at the same time, grief is a whole nother level, and I'm not going to say experience, but it's on a whole nother level, and I just want to stress to our listeners, and if you have experienced grief or haven't, it doesn't matter how long you are in your depth of grief. It doesn't matter. There is no timeline. There is no end date. There is no expectation on you to how you handle it, how you process your emotions, and how long it takes. I think on it personally, and and I say this because this is my personal journey. I didn't read a lot of grief books. I didn't read, I did reach out to some people at, a long way down the track. So for me, this is all personal experience as to how I've been able to understand my own grief journey. And the fact that I have had my own grief journey, I still am not in a position or in a place to full-heartedly, emotionally, mentally be able to support anybody else. So this is purely my words from my experience. But I think, that just don't put the time frame on yourself. There is no time frame. There is no, you're not meant to be at a certain place, at a certain energy, at a certain, reach a time, we haven't gone through a checkpoint,
Absolutely.
If it takes you however long, that's what your body or your heart and your mind needs for this process. So, as I'm getting a little bit off track here, but you said we all, as a human, we all can control where we're at and who we are. Grief strips that from you. And I think Julia can back me here. You have no control over how deep you are affected by the grief. Yeah, you have a control how you can understand it and how you can allow that, how you live with it. but you don't actually have a control of how that grief has an impact on you. And I think as soon as we acknowledge that, and as soon as we let go of that expectation or need to have control over it, the sooner, for me anyways, the sooner I was able to start healing. The sooner I was able to go, okay, this is where I'm at. This is my situation now, and this is who I am right now. Because the day before, the months before, the years before, I'm completely different. And so, you know, I think, yeah, we have control to a certain extent, but when it comes to grief and the level of grief and the depth that, you know, you're just smashed down into, we really don't have control over that. You know, so initially, once the control's gone, you have to turn your mindset around and go, okay, I don't have control over this anymore. I can't control what's going on. But what I can control is how I talk to myself, and how I show up for myself. And by speaking up and letting other people know what you may need from them, how you may need support. And like, you know, initially you might not even know how that is. But I think that's where we can, you know, where the control is. The control's not in how we're affected by the grief. The control comes back into how we see ourselves and how we feel about the situation and how we can move forward. But in generally with the grief. Would you agree, Julia?
Yeah.
So
Totally. I agree. And first of all, I want to acknowledge your emotions and your vulnerability, and that you are here today talking about a topic that is hard, and that and you said, sorry, it is triggering me, and that is nothing to be sorry for. Like, honestly, I want to cheer you on, and I want to say, like, it's so amazing that you're here and that you show us how you feel about this. And then I want to sign everything that you just said. And I think I couldn't have said it better. I think it's between that balance between surrendering to what you can't control and taking your power back in the elements of your life that you can control. So, you know, and that step by step in your tempo, especially if you're grieving, like I can go all life coachy on you and, you know, all Tony Robbins and say like, okay, but we need to go now. Yes. And I love that in the right moment of time.
Yeah.
But you can take control back of things that where you're not keeping a promise to yourself. For example, you say every day, okay, I am so tired, I'm so exhausted because I'm grieving. And that is true. Like, there is such a thing as physical impact of your grief. And what you can take control of is the food that you put in your body. But I'm saying that with love and gentleness, because I also know that when you're grieving, those things that normally maybe even came easy to you, like eating healthy, are difficult because you have not, maybe your emotions are just so strong that all you really can do in that moment is running away from them. Eating popcorn and watching Netflix and watching something that has nothing to do with grief and seriousness. Like, I think all of it is completely allowed in grief. Or in general in life. I think all of that.
Exactly right. And I think, you know, in saying that, I think, you know, we can definitely cross this over, this conversation and this insight and advice, you know, it can be tailored over to all of our topics in this series. I think, you know, today we're just diving in and directing it towards grief, but I definitely think it's across the board with well-being and, you know, and your mental state and your physical health. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So it's for me, it is so important because I am working with women who have lost their baby, but it's never just about the grief when I work with them.
Yeah.
It's always about those little tiny things or big things in life that, you know, you can't change, things you can learn about your well-being, things you can learn about your emotions, and you know, just tiny little shifts that you can accomplish, quote unquote, while you're grieving. I think we were talking about that because I think you wanted to name this grief to growth in the first before we talked. And I was arguing against that because I think it is grief and growth, like they can go parallel. It's not, you can't take one away and say like, first I grieve, and once I'm done grieving, or you know, I'm grown and everything is, you know, the world is my place now and everything is okay. It's just both going together. Like I grew heaps since my son died. Yes, I learned and I healed. And yes, there were things where I was definitely taking action, getting empowered, doing things for me that maybe I would not even have done before, because I learned, fuck, this life can throw bullshit at me all the time. So I need to take control of the stuff that I don't need. I want to take control of the stuff that I can control. I want to, you know, enjoy this life as much as possible and feel all the emotions. And if I want to feel all the emotions, that also means that I need to feel my sadness, my anger, and I mean, I'm crying so often in my life, although I love my life, but it's it just needs to get out sometimes. And sometimes there are also, like, you know, old trauma, old wounds that are still healing, that just come up and
all the time. And I think, you know, I resonate a lot with that. Before my journey started and my loss, I think, you know, I portrayed myself as this really strong, like, you know, young woman who has so much, you know, in front of her that she can handle everything. You know, my warrior shield was up, you know, it didn't even, you couldn't even see my forehead. It was so hard and planted in front of me that, you know, nothing could get through, and nothing did get through, you know, like, and that was the shield, you know, the emotional and mental shield that I put up, but also nobody got in, or very few people got in. So, you know, like, to then be like, you know, thrown into this pit, you know, and to have to feel and to embrace all the emotions, you know, I'm a completely different woman now. You know, there's no way anybody would have seen me crying 5 years ago. You know, and now I'm crying on a live podcast. You know,
I love it.
Like, you know, and again, I can cry all the time, yet, you know, I can, you know, in the next breath, I'm like having a nice, you know, happy giggle. So, you know, just going through the motions of feeling and being, and like, you know, for me, it's not just feeling, it's actually, you know, like a way of being those emotions and the energy that each individual emotion and feeling, you know, holds. And like it, you know, as shitty as it is, and, you know, like, and I'm not going to downplay that, because it's shitty and like, excuse my French, but it's fucked. You know, to have to experience
completely sucks.
Like, you know, and to go through it. And I would never wish it upon anybody, but for myself, you know, the growth and the journey that I have been on, you know, like, I am forever grateful for, you know, for the universe to have pushed me down, for me to, you know, like, prove myself that, you know, I don't actually need that shield in front of me. Like, I'm still strong and I'm still empowered, and I am still, you know, that young woman that, you know, won't back down from anything. But I can do it on my own without, you know, that armor as well. And I can be seen, you know, as who I am, rather than protective gear. So, you know, like, I think, just to be grateful for those little steps and the growth that I have. I thought I'd had so much growth, from my early 20s to my late 20s, but the growth that I've had in the last 4 years is, it's a whole nother world.
Yes. Sometimes that whole unraveling, that showing our weaknesses, showing our pain, gives you more growth than that. I think all is important. Like there are steps in the evolution, and every person's evolution is differently. But I also think maybe it's more a deconditioning than an evolution, more becoming who we are than becoming that person that we look at or compare ourselves with and becoming them, but learning who I actually am. Because I can get inspired from different people. That's awesome. But if I try to be someone just because the other person is inspiring me, that's taking a lot of energy.
And that's the thing, and I'll be honest, there was a point that I did sort of go through that stage is, I did start comparing myself and my journey to, others that, I had seen that was in a similar situation to me, and, and to how far they've come, at a certain time frame. And I was, starting to compare my journey and who I was as an individual. And I'm like, I pulled myself up at one point and I was like, those words, who I am as an individual, it was like a major slap in the face, because I'm comparing who I am as an individual, myself, to someone who's not me. And so it was, it was like, you can never compare your journey to somebody else's journey, because you didn't go through that journey together. And even if you were experiencing, a loss of a family member together, you're still different people, and and you still have different emotions and energy and views and expectations of yourself and others, that you can never walk the same journey at the same time with somebody. So it did take me a few moments to recognize that, to be like, this is my journey, and and the comparison, it doesn't even come into play with grief, and even growth, even your journey of growth. Everybody grows differently, because everybody has their own struggles and their own lessons that they need to accomplish and to achieve. So I think that for me, in this journey, it's a massive point that I need to stress, that your journey and your growth and your grief is never to be compared. You can
kills everything.
Definitely, and you can understand, being on your own journey. I think, there's times in what you've spoken to just today, Julia, that, I can resonate with your words and your emotions, at stages of your journey. And I think, in receiving your story, it definitely put me back into moments in hospital and moments beside the bed, and having to make the decisions and choices at the time. And, I can resonate, and I can, hold space for you in that time. But, I can't, that was your journey, and, and this is my journey, and I can only share from a point of my own experience. And I think, we can't tell people how they are to grieve, and what's expected of them when they are grieving, because even from people who have experienced their own journey and path, it's never the same. So I think we need to hold space and allow each other to go on the journey and path on their own, but just to be there in the background to hold that space when they may need, and when they come forward and ask for a little bit extra support.
Yeah, I think it is important to acknowledge that when we are grieving, if we are in the depths of it, sometimes, even though I'm an advocate for taking action and being responsible for yourself, sometimes people need a little bit of extra support and can't express their need at that time,
Yes.
in that moment.
Yeah.
And one part of my work is helping women, like even with the things I publish online, helping women to find words for their experience. So in the worst case, they can just send the post to someone else, and say, look, I can't say this out loud because I'm going to start crying like a baby. So I wouldn't get the 2 words of this out, but this is actually how I'm feeling. Or this, it resonates with me a lot. It's not 100% my experience, but there are just some similarities. And I think it's, in that part, it can be really empowering too, to know that even without comparing ourselves, to know that some of those things are normal that we experience, like that there is such a thing as a grief brain, and your brain can be all foggy, and there is such a thing as a heartache syndrome, where you really feel physical pain in your heart, as if it's stopped beating, and sometimes it even skips the beat. So it is there. It's a physical syndrome. Like
it's physical, definitely.
And it's good to know that, because when you don't, you feel like, shoot, am I going
100%.
crazy? Like,
definitely.
And I think I think we could talk so long in so many areas. There's just so much to share and to talk about when it comes to grief and loss that I think is not talked about enough. And I think what didn't resonate with me, Shailesh, is like something you said, like you need to get on from your emotion or move on. I'm not sure about your words exactly, but for me that was a big for me, always in a moment, a big ouch, because I think yes, we can do a lot to feel better and do things for ourselves, but there is no, if I put that pressure on me that I do this healing modality now, and then afterwards I need to feel better, there is that whole lack of surrendering to what's going on. And I think it's so important to surrender to our emotions, to surrender to our life experience, and just bring some acceptance into the way we're feeling, what we're experiencing. Because if we always go around and fight our reality, fight our body, we are always going to be in that mode. And it's just changing. For me personally, it was a game changer when I allowed myself to feel that. And that doesn't mean that I'm now running around being sad all the time. That means that I also experience more joy. And you're
able to shift that.
Yes. And the important part, my son died 6 years ago. I would have had a completely different conversation with you 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And like, I think every day there is just a shift.
I definitely resonate with you, Julia, because there's a year ago, I was just looking at things this morning, and if I'm completely honest with myself, there is no way I would have been here a year ago. There's no way that I would have been able to have a conversation and wipe my tears and continue to go and to be seen. And I think with taking the pressure off of having to be healed to be able to move on was a big game changer for me as well. I think grief doesn't have a time frame. It can take people. Some people are amazing, and I have heard stories that they're able to acknowledge what's happened, and they're able to take it on and get on with their life. They still grieve, but they're able to, do daily stuff straight away. Then there are others that, the world comes crashing down and you cannot physically, mentally, function. And that may last for days, weeks, years. And I think, when we do take the pressure off that, okay, you need to get up, you need to acknowledge your emotions. And now it's time to go back to work. Now it's time to get back out into society, and it's time to adult, and it's time to, be a functioning member of the community and society again. I think that extra pressure, forces us to cement the layers down and just block it in. And it does so much more damage to our core being than I think, even myself, a lot of us fully understand that, once you place those layers on, it just takes so much more work to find the key, to unlock the lock, to then start to unpack it all again. So I think, for me, that actually acknowledging that I can still be grieving, but I can still be moving forward, living. Yeah. So I think, when you did say that the other day, Julia, about, it's not grief to growth, it's grief and growth, that was like a real game changer for me. Just the wording. And I think, it was a reminder to me that our wording plays such a big role in our day-to-day lives and in every situation. If we just change one word, because that's all we changed, one word was and to or two to and. So it was, it flips it completely. And it's like, you can have the hand in hand and still be living and still be enjoying life. It's not, it's not disregarding any of the emotions or stress or heartache or grief that you've already experienced or are experiencing, but it's actually acknowledging you as such a powerful being. And, and you are taking the control back, it's, I am here, I am capable of living. I am also capable of experiencing the emotions and the situations that I've been through. And it doesn't make me a lesser person. I think for me to acknowledge that the universe wasn't, wasn't putting me, giving me any criticism, or it wasn't putting me down, or it wasn't, putting me through all this heartache and pain because I'd done something wrong, or I wasn't a worthy enough person. It was actually helping me. And I am strong, and I am powerful, and I am worthy of the experience, and also of living, and of being happy, and of love again. I'm worthy to love, and I'm worthy to be loved, and I'm worthy to offer myself as energetic being to the people I surround myself with. And I think, it all come down with, just changing the words.
Yeah, and I think, but the key thing, whether it's and or to, what humans in spiritual way or in the spirited way, that we are all spirits. So we are all humans. We have got the power, as you see, to do lots of things and to uncover, and universe hasn't done anything. We are just into this universe. And so we are experiencing every single moment. And for me, if I had to put it, grief and growth is, they are two hand in hand, like a subconscious process of our human beings. And everybody experiences their grief in a different way, and they present it in a different way because they have got their own way of handling things. But change is inevitable, as we mentioned earlier, and when I was listening to both of you. Most point direction is change. Everybody wants change, but you don't have to change. Every single moment there is change happening inside you, outside you. So how do you deal it? How do you present it? How do you accept it and acknowledge it, that we are having these changes, and that we are facing these grievances or griefs that we are having, but are we stuck there, or are we moving from there? Are we trying to grow out of it, or are we trying to just say that, okay, I'm grieving? And you're right, like there is no time limit, there's no time bound for any grief or for anything, really speaking. It is that acknowledgement and that acceptance is a way of spiritual way of living, rather than putting a label or identity that no, I will finish this by this end of this day or end of this time, my grief will be over if I get this. There is no conditions that if I do this, I will overcome the grief. That grief is a process that subconsciously in our mind, in our thoughts, it's happening. And some way or the other, we are just trying to ignore, or we are just trying to accept or not accept. But each one is dealing in a different way to their grief, to their own griefs, and to their own losses. But our whole idea is to, how do we move forward? And moving forward means growing, basically. And growing to me is not, you can't acknowledge straight away that you are been grown, and you don't have to tell anyone whether you're growing or not. It's up to you. You are reflecting yourselves. You are not comparing. If you start comparing with others, then you will never get, as you said, you should never compare. And that's the correct word. If you start comparing with others, then you will never see yourself in a growth mode. You will always see in a pain mode or in a grief mode. And I feel that when you start comparing yourself, meaning your own reflections, how far you have come after year by year or after day by day, then you will definitely acknowledge and notice your growth. That's what is all about, is like, how do you uncover yourself, and rather than comparing with others, because it's your life, it's your journey, it's you are only having that pain, you are only experiencing that pain. So I think your experiences is your experiences, my experiences is mine. But still, as a human, goals of our is, we are all looking for that hope, we are all looking for that slight development or developed ourselves rather than others. So to me, grief and growth, or grief to growth, as you said, it's perfect. Grief and growth is a subconscious process, actually, I would say. To me, I feel that grief and growth, every day we experience it inside and outside. So whether we are looking at other people who are grieving, or looking at around us who are having grief, we still are experiencing that. And whether it is inside for us, we are still experiencing with us. And our experience is our experiences that we want to uniquely present or uniquely come out of it. That's what, in my simple terms, would be. Our emotions are very, very much changing every single moment. But we are only into accepting that emotions which are pointing towards grief or pointing towards pain, because they can be obviously attack us, our mind, our body, everything, physically, mentally, they are attacking us. But this is where we have got the power to uncover and overcome that. That's what I feel as a human. I don't know. What do you think, you guys?
I think you're shooting the second arrow again. I think you're telling me you should not.
No, I'm in fact saying that don't shoot me. I am hitting you back. Once I'm hit
There
by
was a
pain,
lot in there. There was
I
a
know.
lot of a lot of points that came up for me. That
Yeah.
I probably, I think I understand. Like, I can see where you might be coming from. I think for me, another way that I've been able to help myself move through different stages in my journey. I've had to learn how to flip words, and I've had to, reword what people might be saying to me, because, so I don't feel attacked or offended or misunderstood, because I also understand that, like a lot of my close family and dearest friends have never experienced anything similar to the journey that I have been on, and have been with me every step of the way. But they still, and with wanting to help and wanting to understand me, but the language that we share, I've really had to learn how to turn that around so I wasn't triggered. I'm definitely, I don't know if you can notice, but I'm definitely sitting up a lot straighter now, trying to move those second arrows straight out of my my heart space, that's for sure. Look, I think for me, yeah, it can be very subconscious, grief and growth, there are subconscious emotion and energy and space that we go through. You have no control over it. And I think, what you do have, what was one thing that stood out for me is that, what was it? That we have the choice. And yeah, as human beings, we all have a choice, and change is inevitable. But a lot of, there are a lot of people that, change is discomfort. They like to stay in the areas that are comfortable. Now, grief is not comfortable, so there is no other way. The only way to move out of it is to change. So, you do have to make a choice whether you want to be, it doesn't matter how long that can be, but, for me at a certain point, it did come to it was like, I can't survive in the discomfort. But there was no pressure on me to move out of that, by a certain time. It was gently, very, very, very slowly that I was able to process that I couldn't survive in the discomfort anymore. And I had to actually change my way of thinking. And I had to acknowledge that, that the level of pain that I'm continuing, is not something that's healthy or safe for me. It definitely wasn't a safe place to be in. So that's where, with when you said, change is inevitable, I was able to change your wording to, to apply it to my situation, because, I didn't have, it wasn't my choice to be where I was, but it was my choice to change how the situation was affecting me. But, again, with the grief fog and the confusion and the heartache, it definitely took a lot longer than, than I am understanding that you think it did, and that's fine. I'm not offended by that at all. But, I think just in your language just then, it was like, I understood that it was like a quick process, and how
really,
you.
what I wanted to just say with your choice, just interrupting you, what I wanted to just clarify that, say that is we receive and we get lots of things without our choices to start with. Now, when we receive lots of things, just whether it is pain, whether it is joy, whether it is anything, we receive without our choices, without we asking for it, we get it. But then in that, we are finding that whether is it, then we are resonating when we receive something, is it good for us or it is good, not good for us? That's our mind and our thoughts and our emotions accept or not accept, and they want more or not more or less than what we receive. So, and that's where our choices are, to make choices from the receipts that we have got it automatically without our choices. So first thing we get without our choices, everything we get. And then from that, we actually start choosing what we like or what we don't like, or what we grieve or what we don't grieve. That's what I wanted to just say, that because universe we came, we came in this universe without our choice. We didn't choose our siblings. We didn't choose our siblings. We came without our choice in this universe. We don't know which family we were born and all that, and who are our surroundings and who we are friends. We automatically.
I just want to stop you there. But that's I think that in itself is completely separate. But before we go any further, I think that's for me, my view and my understanding is that we do, it's a contract that we've signed, and for me, so to be born into the family for so long, I was like, I didn't choose to be born. I didn't choose to be my parents, but it actually did, so like my soul contract, and from doing the work that I have and the journeys that I've been on, like my guardians have reassured me that, like this is your journey, and to, like embrace it, and you're here, you wanted to be here. So I think I wouldn't agree with that, like we did have a choice to be here. We're a miracle, it was our choice.
Oh, yeah.
We're the one survivor that, made it to, so I think
Correct.
by choice, it's what we decided. But that's a completely separate topic. So let's go back to what we're talking about. Julia, would you like to put something in there?
I had so many things I wanted to say. And I completely am on the same page when it comes to why we're here and who we meet in this life and who comes into our life. However, it is such a different topic, and I don't think it is necessarily connected to grief or healing, or like it is all interconnected, definitely. But okay, I have made some notes. Not all of that was important, but I think you mentioned like you're moving around the words in your head, and I think so you're not triggered, and I think this is so important to talk about, because words have such a big impact, and sometimes we get hurt because of what we hear someone saying and what we make out of it in our head, what it means for us. And the same way, which is connected to shooting the second arrow, is that we have our mean girl talking to us a lot of the time. And I think this is what we can impact, whether we grieve or not. Like, it's not about, okay, I need to get over this grief. It's about, how do I accept this grief in my life? How do I accept this loss in my life? And this is, I think, resonating with what you were saying, although some of the things or the way you expressed it would have triggered me a lot while I was grieving, because they felt like they sounded in my ears, and I know exactly how I can 100% remember how I felt. They sounded like, get over it, move on. And I know it's not like what you're saying, but
I'm not saying that.
It came across like that. And I think maybe to put it in other words, I personally think for me it helped to get proactive. And for me it helped to learn those things that helped me to cope with my emotions, that helped me to hold them without going into my mean girl, and without going into this learned helplessness that I had before. Like being there and feeling the emotions was one part, but then before I started learning those things, I would go in my head and I would tell myself that, or ask myself the wrong questions, ask myself, oh, why did this happen to you? And maybe, I would talk mean to me, like maybe this happened because you were not good enough as a person. Or I would talk mean about life in the universe and say like, universe, you suck, like I've always been so good, and I've been vegan and working with children with autism, why do you do this to me? That's not what it is about. So the part of where we I think where I want to go to is that yes, we do have some impact on how we handle things. We don't have impact on what exactly we're feeling. We don't have impact on what is happening. But yes, emotion is, what we're feeling is vibration in our body. And I can prolong it by fighting it. I think it was Byron Katie who said, what we resist persists. The more we fight and argue with our emotions, with our life, with our experience, the more we're staying in this emotion, in this anger, in this sadness, and another thing, and I'm throwing about quotes, but I have my own opinion. If you argue with reality, you can only lose. It's just one thing where when I heard it first, like, oh, fuck you. But I want to argue with my reality because I don't want to have lost my son.
Oh yeah.
I'm really not happy with that. So let me argue a little bit more. But it is true. Like once you say like, okay, okay, stop arguing. Okay. Then things start changing. But there is no timeline on that. And it's not like I came out of the hospital and I'm like, okay, cool, accepted, bitch. Let's move forward. Sure, there was some time, like it's grief, it's a process, it's a journey, and there is a time where we will say like, there is something that I'm ready for change. It might not look like, okay, now I'm going back to my old life because I don't think that's possible. And now I'm going back to that ideal life. But there is a time when we're saying like, okay, I'm realizing that my thoughts, my habits, and what I can control, what I'm doing, my behaviors is actually not good for me. And I think now I am slowly getting ready to change the things I can change, to take control of the things I can control. And that time is different for everyone though. Everybody. Like there is just a time when we're not in that mindset, not in that state. And I think I will grieve differently now after having this experience. So if life throws something like this on me again, I will come into that and say, okay, bring it on. I can do this. I can feel
I was just going to ask that actually.
I was thinking the same.
Myself, I think I'm like, so I guess, there is that wall of fear and protection up that, like I've put myself into a state of, I don't know if I could go through that same experience again. And I think, like I've gone, okay, well, I'm not even going to entertain the fact of, being in another relationship or, having, to experience loss. But for me, it's like, well, since then I've lost both my mum's parents, and like the grief is like I experience loss so much differently now, and I process it so much differerently, and I'm still affected by loss. Like, it's like I'm straight back there. But I think with having experienced, another loss since being so deep into grief, in reflection there, like I know I haven't stayed there as long, and I can, appreciate the life that, the time that I did have with them, and I pull from those memories and that experience that, I was able to have with them to be able to help with their passing. So, but then again, I don't know how I would be if it was someone's like, a partner like that, had to go through the whole thing again.
And that said, I mean, there is a difference in how we experience our grandparents passing,
Yeah.
and having our partner or our baby passing, because um,
Mm.
sure, like, the words that come up in our mind are, well, of course, our grandparents, they lived their life, were
Yeah.
there, and if you lose someone in a time frame that is the unacceptable time frame, the one that we are not used to, that where they did not live their life to the fullest.
Yeah.
We are grieving that, of course. We are grieving all that future that we wanted with them, that we wanted for them, and all the missed experiences. I mean, that's a really big part of the grief that is different from when you lose your grandparents. I think, from my experience.
No,
because,
definitely. Yeah. Yes.
Because we can, it's easier to talk kind to ourselves and calm ourselves down and reason and bargain. Like, we can reason it a little bit better. But with dramatic, traumatic experiences, like the loss of a partner or the loss of a baby, our brain wants an answer. Our brain wants a why.
Definitely.
So we need to find, in my opinion, we need to find the answers that serve us, that don't hurt us more. Like, just not going into telling us the story of this is all super unfair and this should not have happened to me, my life would be so much better now. Your life would be so much different now. Yes.
Definitely. Yeah.
And yeah, if you're in the depths, like, sorry.
No, go ahead.
There are just those different phases. Like, some of the things that I'm saying, well, sure, I don't want to hear them one day or 2 days after, because you need to go through the process of being angry at it. You need to go through the process of wondering why. It's part of it. But over time, you learn those, or it helped me learning to make sure that I think what helps me to think.
Yeah.
Because that's what we can control. We can control our thoughts. We can't control our emotions.
Yeah.
We can impact them by what we think happy thoughts, but sometimes we can't just step out of our experience and say, like, oh, well, I'm sitting at the beach now and everything is fine. I love using that, actually, with my clients, sitting at the beach, being in a safe place, and then allowing the emotion of grief in. So we realize that feeling, and also the hard feelings, are safe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. I definitely resonate with that. I think, like, once you are able to, still enjoy, like at the beach, or for me at a waterfall, going out to places that are safe, and that you're still able to go through the motions of, like, because grief just washes over you at the most randomest times. You can just, it can be amazing setting, you can, and you just have this little flint of a memory or something, sometimes you don't even know what it is, and it's just like, you haven't even been triggered, but you just get like this wave of, just emotion and energy, and then next minute, you're tearing up, or you're not understanding actually where this emotion comes from. And I think for me, when that did happen a few times, in a nice setting, in a safe environment at the beach, or by the waterfall, it did help me to realize that, that it was okay enjoying life, and you still can be embraced with safety and, like a nice, safe environment, and grief is okay to be there. I think for a long time for me, I was a bit ashamed that I was grieving for so long. you know, and whereas now, you know, like I definitely haven't, you know, my grief is still very, very present. And that's okay. Whereas for so long I was like, you know, I never spoke about it. If I was still hurting, if I was still struggling, I never shared it. It was just like, okay, because it was like, you've got to get back to work now. You've got to get back to living. So, you know, I definitely did have those timelines and pressure from some family members, you know, just because that was the only way they knew how to
overcome,
get me out of the house, I think, you know, and to try, and that was the only way they understood how to talk about grief and everything. But so it was, for a while there, you know, it was very shameful to be grieving for so long. But as soon as, you know, like I came to the terms that, you know, I'm safe to grieve wherever, and I'm safe to cry, and I'm safe to feel these emotions, and to, you know, going through these experiences, it's normal, you know, and it's fine to be normal. And I think, you know, for me, the one of the big intentions, you know, I had going into this podcast series was to normalize emotions and feelings and energy that, you know, your body is holding and you carry on a daily basis.
Thank you for doing that. I mean, I think that is so important. I think there is a huge shift now, but what I felt when I lost Simon was I was always like drawn to the spiritual world, to the personal development world, but I felt a little bit lost in it because it felt like toxic positivity. It felt like, you know, those signs, good vibes only.
Yeah.
And now I was totally into them before I lost my my son. I was like, yeah, good vibes only, cool, let's go. And now I wanna just rip them and say, like, you know, authenticity only.
Yes. Yes.
It doesn't work that way. You can't push it all away.
You know, I think for me, you know, everything has the polar opposite. You know, you've got the bad with the good. You can't have good without the bad. You can't have the light without the dark. You know, and that, you know, and saying that you've got everything in between. So there's the shadows, there's the grayness, you know, you've got the bright rainbow, you've also got the depth of, you know, the deep. And I think, you know, positivity, you will never, well, not never, but, you know, like, you won't have that if you don't experience and understand the negativity. So, you know, I think we have to, it's not all rainbows, it's not all love and happiness, but to be able to understand emotional well-being and the, you know, the importance of it. You know, we also need to touch, not just touch, that's the wrong word, we need to go deep into the darkness and into the fears and the unknown, because that for me is where I've had my biggest growth. That for me is where I've learned the most about me and about my spirituality and about, you know, what my purpose is and who I am as an individual, energetic being. That, you know, it never, nothing came from the light, because once you're in the light, it's like, oh, I'm blinded, or, you know, this is what's in front of me. I think, you know, the darkness and the deep emotions is where, you know, where you have the growth.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I think you can grow in both parts.
Oh yes.
I just want to say that I super resonate with that, and I think it's so important. And I think this what I want to say, because it sometimes feels like now we're just like, okay, but you're allowed to feel shitty, you're allowed to feel that, and yes, of course. We do, you know, there are possibilities that we can raise our vibrations, and there are possibilities and ways and tools to shift our state. And I think that's all super important, like bring it all together, you know. It's not just that. I feel like there are like two kind of worlds and mindsets out there. And yes, there are heaps of people in this world who have no problem at all talking about their problems. And I'm from Germany, I know what I'm talking about. It's a lot about problems. And it's just, yes, you put your focus on one corner and you get drawn into it, and you're like, oh yeah, you constantly shooting the second arrow. Like, it's not that I want to say with everything I'm saying, like, feel it, grieve, allow yourself. I'm not saying and now sit in there and stay there.
Yeah.
Move through it, move through it, move wherever you want to go, whatever you need right now. And yes, you also can put your focus, and our brain is wired in a certain way, on positive things, and you can force yourself to look at what you're grateful for, because otherwise we might forget that those things are there. That doesn't mean that you need to be only grateful and you're not allowed to grieve.
Yeah.
Like, gratitude has been a huge impact for me, like looking
Definitely
today and saying, oh, I'm so grateful for the butterfly I saw today. It reminded me on Simon. It's not that I say, okay, now I'm focusing on gratitude. That means I'm eradicating my experience. And there are so many other things, Definitely. you can shift into positivity, and it's difficult for us as human beings. That's, I think, was one message that Shailesh, you had, like, yes, we like to focus on or a lot of us focus on negativity, and no, it's not helpful. Of course it's not, whether we're grieving or not. So yes, you can shift your focus on the positive things. I just think that that's what I mean by authenticity. It's still important to acknowledge that despite focusing on the positive, there is shit going on in my life, and I'm still sad. Like, I don't go out, or I'm moving away from it now. I don't go out on Instagram and only post my happy moments. I'm drawn to, because of course that's what I want to share with people. But I move more into sharing the tough stuff too, because otherwise I think we are drawing just people who are more into the negative stuff, even more in there, because they're comparing themselves with the beautiful pictures of 10% of my day, and not with the falling apart roof that I'm actually sitting under, because houses in Argentina are not super new and super made up. No, it's not a perfect Instagram story picture, but it's my life. And I can be grateful for other things, for things that I do every day, and still have things that I'm rolling my eyes and say, like, it would be nice if it would be different, but it's not my focus, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
I think I feel I just went venting here, but
good.
That's
so
good.
Shailesh, is there anything that you would like to add to wrap up our chat
just
today?
one thing I wanted to add, when you touched that, we were talking about problems, and I was just referring to our quote back that we had put on a flyer, that there is nothing called a problem. There is nothing called a problem. It's no such thing, but it is just an absence of an idea to find a solution. And I think when we look at that point of view, what we were discussing today is all about thoughts. And you are right. We don't have control on emotions, as you said, Julia, but we can control our thoughts. And that's very important, because thoughts leads to emotions, basically. So if we can control the thoughts, then automatically we will try to minimize the damage of grief that comes with the thoughts as emotions that we express through the emotions. So very good, insightful discussion today, Julia. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story. But also equally, I would appreciate that Beck, who is our beautiful host, but also today she uncovered a lot of things, and I really got my resonation as well, to a lot of extent, that when we discussed, then only we realized that, okay, if you are grieving, if your thoughts are this way, my thoughts are this way, how do we ultimately, our end goal is to evolve as a human, and ultimately our goal is to move out of this grief as quickly as possible, and everybody moves out of it as they move out, but there is no time bound, no time limits for anything. And I think we all are here to experience only everything. And we touched on it, why we came, what's our purpose, everything we touched on it. And it was a great insight. It was a real spiritual awakening for, hopefully for many listeners who are listening, could understand and resonate to what we three different souls are coming from. So it's, once again, thank you so much, Julia. And I would like to have just end it by saying then, yes, grief and growth is a topic which affects our emotional well-being. It is a topic that are like another topics, that there are many other topics that affects our emotional well-being, but ultimately how you manage and how you deal with it is up to all individual way of dealing it. But the sooner you acknowledge and accept that you are grieving, that's where you will start finding solutions for yourself, rather than depending on others to find a solution. As Beck said, that you don't live a life of others, you live a life of your own. I will end there. And I would like to just say, what is the final message, Julia, you would like to say, and then I'll move to Beck, and then Beck can finish it off to our
Okay,
audience.
well, I had one thing that came up that we didn't talk about.
Yes.
Is that I think it is completely okay also get support from others, especially when you're grieving.
Absolutely.
And it is important to, yeah, it is important to acknowledge and accept where you are. But yeah, like get that help, get that therapist, work with the coach, talk to a friend, get into a grief group, find what works for you. I think that is really, really important. And sometimes we are all differently. Sometimes we work a lot about journaling, feeling it ourselves, figuring it out. That can be empowered too. I think there are blind spots that we can have, questions. We don't know what we don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. I think my summary would be that there is it's all a balance, like it's grief and growth, it's it's black and white, it's light and dark, it's sadness and joy, and I guess when you take one thing from this conversation, I think it's, be aware of when you're shooting the second arrow, and tell yourself to not be or feel a certain way, or when you start telling yourself that you should not experience a certain thing. I think that's extremely important.
Yeah.
In every area of life in general, but especially when you're grieving, don't put yourself in a position to make it worse for you.
Definitely.
I agree. Well said. Very well said. Julia.
Thank you so much for your time today, Julia. I definitely moved some energy that was has been sitting stagnant. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. So I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been great to talk about this, and thank you also for your vulnerability. Like, it's so important to see the different stages too, and just have we're all on different parts in our life with different maps, with different experiences. So so great to have that conversation with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Beck. And we should probably, to all our listeners, we will come back with more and more. This is topics, people may think they are serious topics or joy of topic. It's not about that. These topics resonates to us, as human beings. And I think Freedom of Civility, our podcast series that we have started, is on the note that how we can all can resonate with these day-to-day routine topics that comes to us without asking us, and we just had to deal with it. We just had to experience it, all of these things. So yeah, thanks once again, Vic, for your insights as well today, as Julia's insights were more powerful and yours also was more powerful. So I think hopefully our audiences will take something out of it. And if they have any questions, they can always come back to us. So with that, I end this, and over to Vic to finish this off once again.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a lovely day.
Yeah.